Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. I am so glad you're here and I'm so happy to be recording my 2022 book favorites. It is a little late it's February of 2023, but either way, we're gonna get there. We're gonna go through our favorites. Very excited to be back. I have a couple videos planned, but I'm mostly excited to talk about the standout, like amazing books that I read this past year. There's a couple that are by the same author that you might notice are all Sarah J. Maas. Not all of them, but a couple of them are. And honestly, that's mainly because, well, for one, she's become one of my favorite authors, but I also read most of her books last year. I started reading towards like the end of 2021 and then spent the whole rest of 2022. And I wanted to space them out. I didn't want to finish them all like super quick. So that is a quick explanation why that is. I know it doesn't matter. It's my favorite, so who cares? But you should read them if you like fantasy, especially if you like, I'll get into it later. Let's get started. We're just gonna start with fantasy, and I'm gonna go ahead and just talk about Sarah J. Maas and the books that I have that are my favorite of hers from this past year. These are just the ones that I read in 2022. I have read the reading order that I did, and also me and my friend Katie are planning a whole video around all of Sarah J. Maas's works and ranking like our favorites from like least favorite to favorite. Let me know if you'd be interested in that, and we'll talk more about like the order that we recommend reading them and all that fun stuff, which I'm super excited for. But I kind of want to just explain a little bit, because if you know nothing about this author, she has 3 separate series, and I'm not going to spoil anything, but they are interconnected in different ways, some more subtle and some more direct. And because of that, this is why I recommend reading them this way. The way that I read them, I feel like was a really good experience. Obviously, I only speak from my own experience. Other people might like it different. But I read Court of Thorns and Roses first, which is 5 books. And then I read Crescent City, which is, as of right now, 2 books. And then I'm reading, and I'm on the last book of the Throne of Glass series, which is 6 books. The only one that's completed fully is Throne of Glass, which is the one I'm finishing now. The other 2 I believe have like, she's actively working on more to those, so. Anyways, I'll go into why I think that's the best way and like the coolest experience in that video we do like a deep dive on, so stay tuned for that. So I will start with A Court of Silver Flames, which is heavily annotated, as is all of my books by her. And I have a whole video on why and how I annotate my books. It has evolved a little bit since that video, but the premise is the same if you want to check that out. But I really like it. I feel like it really keeps me engaged with the book, and really looking for things that I love and like noticing trends and things like that. But essentially this book, without giving any spoilers for the rest of the series, because I do feel like it's really important to read the whole thing, is about Nesta, which is the oldest Archeron. I never know how to say that right. She's the oldest sister of the 3 of them. And this book is centered around her and from her perspective. And I will say this. I was hesitant to read this one because she's not portrayed in the best light in the rest of the books at all, actually. And most of this book, like the first quarter, she's also not. But this has wonderful payout, wonderful character development, which is one of the reasons I enjoy this author so much. I feel like she does a fantastic job of fleshing out a character from the inside out and giving amazing character arcs to all of her characters. And I don't know, there's just a lot of depth to her writing and a lot of like, yeah, that's the main thing. And like, it's such a well-built world that they live in, and the magic systems are really cool. The romance is awesome. This one is spicy, so if you don't want that, then don't read this. But it's tasteful, you know. It's good, trust me. But I would not recommend this to your teenage child or your younger sibling that is below the age of 18. This is 18 plus, okay? It can be a little bit misleading because I feel like I would say this whole series is just 18 plus in general, but like I think they market the like first couple books as YA, which I don't know if I would agree. but they're amazing. So this is my favorite one in the series. 100%. It was really cool. I have a vlog uploaded on this channel, I believe somewhere, of me and Katie, my friend. We went on like a reading weekend trip and read this book. I didn't finish it on that trip, but I got a good bit of it done. And so I think it's really cool because I have like good memories tied to this one as well. It's rough though. It's very emotional, very heavy, but it's also awesome. So I want to read my favorite quote, a couple of my favorite quotes really quick that are not spoilery. Okay, here's one. This book is also like very much like overcoming trauma and like self-growth and things like that, and like they talk a lot about depression, so I think that's awesome, and that's really cool, I feel like, to do in a fantasy novel, like actually talk about those things. And I know a lot of times people will read fantasy for like escapism, but I feel like this does enough of that as well to where like it's a very powerful message. So what you feel, this guilt and pain and self-loathing, you will get through it, but only if you're willing to fight, only if you are willing to face it, embrace it, and walk through it to emerge on the other side of it. And maybe you will still feel that tinge of pain, but there is another side, a better side. So good. And of course, this one's really good, and this one's pretty popular, but I am the rock against which the surf crashes. Nothing can break me. So good. So good. Okay, this one's my favorite one. And this is taking up some time, but I feel like it's important. Like, quotes are one of my favorite things in books, and like part of the reason why this one's my favorite one. So that's the key, isn't it? To know the darkness will always remain, but how you choose to face it, handle it, that's the important part. To not let it consume, to focus upon the good, the things that fill you with wonder. The struggle with that darkness is worth it to see such things. So yeah, so that was my favorite one. Moving on, because I've talked about this one a lot, but this is, these are not in order, but like, probably one of my favorite ones of the year. Anyways, moving on. So now we have the Crescent City duology. Well, it's not a duology, but like as of right now, there's only 2 books out. So we have House of Earth and Blood, and then we have House of Sky and Breath. If I had to pick a favorite between these two, they're both in this list, but this one, House of Sky and Breath, is probably, I like a little bit better than this one, and I'll explain why. This one, House of Earth and Blood, it's a lot of world building, especially like a little bit more complicated and complex than A Court of Thorns and Roses. So my message to you, if you're starting this one, is to not let that discourage you and not let that like turn you off, because the first like quarter to half, and this is thick book, which so is the other one. And I'm sad because I kind of tore the dust jacket. This is why I don't like hardback. I'm gonna make a whole video, separate video about like my favorite. I don't love hardbacks, okay? I'm just saying that. I'm just gotta say it. But it's beautiful. And so like look at this. Beautiful. Oh, there's my annotation key for this one. I forgot to put that in the last one. Yeah. So, and then also like, again, watch the full annotation video for details, but like what I annotate is different based off the book. Like I don't annotate the same things every single time. I just see what calls to me, you know. Anyways, so yeah, this is a little bit more complex. It takes a little while to get going, to kind of build up, to get you used to the characters. I feel like these characters are very different than ACOTAR characters. Bryce is your main character here. And she experiences in the first little bit of this book a great loss in her life, and she essentially makes it her mission to figure out what's going on, and it feels like a mystery novel within a fantasy novel. So there's a lot of layers to this one. I will not ever be able to unthink this, and this is hilarious, but if you've seen Zootopia, the Disney movie, is it Pixar or Disney? I think it's Disney. It's a very similar story in a way that's like fun. It's not like a Disney novel, because this one's also spicy. This one's a little bit spicy. But it's different, but it's funny because the concept's kind of similar. It's like the Grumpy Sunshine is a trope in here. It's got an awesome love story as well. A lot of really cool depictions of friendships and different kind of friendships. It's got like a found family trope as well. Very, very, very good. Let me find my favorite quote in this one. I don't want to talk details about this one, but heartbreaking then let the world know that my first act of freedom was to help my friends. And light it up. Alrighty, and then this is just the sequel to that last one, and there's just so much that happens in this book. It is shocking what they do in this book, okay? There's so much. I don't even want to really talk about this one because I really don't want there to be spoilers for this one, so like, don't come for me if we're not explaining it, but it's a continuation of the last one. Also, look at that. How cool is that? Anyways, there's also really pretty maps in all of these books as well. Okay, favorite quote in this one, let's see. Okay, this one's really good. Our love is stronger than time, greater than any distance. Our love spans across stars and worlds. I will find you again, I promise. Next, we have my favorites so far in the, my favorites of the Throne of Glass series in 2022. That's what I'll say. I started using some different color tabs, which is fun. But we have the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the fifth and sixth installment of the Throne of Glass series. I think, doesn't matter. This one and then this one. Air Fire is your classic enemies to lovers, likely relationships and friendships. So good. So good. Okay, so this whole series has a very different vibe. This one definitely feels more almost like Game of Thrones, like a more classic fantasy setting. A lot of action. She's an assassin. And there's also obviously like there's a great romance as well. But there's a lot of characters in these books and they're all really good for the most part. So yeah, love this one. You're following Selena. Her name's also, I'm kind of iffy about how to pronounce it. So she's an assassin and she gets hired by this king to be his like personal assassin, and you're following like her journey and her discoveries about who she really is and her friendships along the way and like what she has to sacrifice to save the kingdom where she came from because she previously was a slave. And yeah, that's basically a basic summary. This series is very good. I'm not gonna dive in too much more about these. I think I'm gonna not do any more quotes. I might put them on the screen, we'll see. I don't know, but I talk a lot on Instagram about my favorite quotes in these. Very good series, very heavily annotated. 10 out of 10 would recommend. Okay, my last fantasy favorite before we move on to a different genre is The Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern. I think that's how you pronounce her name. This really surprised me, and we read this in our book club that I have at my work with some of my friends, and we have a great time. And a lot of my favorites actually came out of this, which is really cool. So this is very unique. You are following Zachary, and he is kind of like a little nerdy. There's a lot of video game references and like TV and pop culture references in this. The best way to describe this, and I wrote like a full review on my Instagram if you wanted to go check that out, but the best way to describe this is very like ethereal and very like atmospheric. If you love fantasy and you love storytelling, this is a book that is very heavily about books, which is really cool, and it's something I didn't realize that I liked that much. But it's very like dreamlike. It's very prosy, and if you're not a fan of that, there are some people I know that like aren't necessarily a fan of that, but it sometimes almost feels like poetry. There is also stories within stories. The illustrations are really cool. There's like a couple of different illustrations. This is by the same author that wrote The Night Circus. It's pretty. A lot of amazing quotes in this one. I posted them on Instagram if you want to read them, but I would highly recommend this if you love any of those things. I had some like minor complaints about this one, mainly because some of it is a little bit outlandish, but it's kind of supposed to be, honestly. But for the most part, like, I thought this book was amazing. I think that is, as one of my friends who does a blog, which you guys should follow him, I'll put his website down below, it is a love letter to storytelling, and I totally agree with that. very good. My last fantasy favorite is Under the Whispering Door, which I will put a picture of it on the screen because I actually listened to the audiobook, which I thought was an awesome experience. This one, I'll also put the blurb on the screen, but you are following a gentleman who lived a pretty miserable life and was like kind of a toxic person, and he dies. And this is not a spoiler, this is like in the synopsis, and goes to this tea shop, which essentially is like a purgatory. And he is essentially helping like the Grim Reaper that is a little girl, and it's hilarious. It's funny, it's heartbreaking, it talks a lot about grief. There's a lot of elements to it, and it's been a while since I read it, so I don't remember all the character names, but this one really was impactful. It talks about death in a very hopeful way, which is awesome. But it is also heartbreaking at the same time, so keep that in mind. But I remember it being a pretty short read. It's something I highly recommend, and I recommend the audiobook. I had a good time with it. Let's talk contemporary. This one, Once There Were Wolves, is kind of a contemporary mystery. So it has both elements. This one's pretty unique. It takes place in Scotland, where you are following sisters Inti and Aggie. They're twins. And this one has a lot of unique elements. The main character has a unique disorder, which I won't touch on fully because I feel like it's a cool element to be surprised by. This one's very unique and not something that I've really read anything like before. So I highly recommend reading it because they're trying to integrate wolves back into Scotland, and so it's kind of sciencey and like biology as well, but it's pretty easy to follow. I also love this cover. Yeah, it's a really good, it's fairly short too. It's like 230 pages, and I think it's a great read. There's a lot of good messages. Sibling dynamics is a really big thing here. There's also talks of domestic violence, so if that's triggering for you, just keep that in mind, but I do feel like it talks about it in a really productive way. One of my favorite quotes, which I don't think I've posted this anywhere, so I want to read it. What's dangerous is the unwarranted spreading of fear, and I think that's a really good quote. But yeah, Once There Were Wolves by Charlotte McConaughey. I'm not going to talk too long about that one and this upcoming one, which is debatably also one of my favorites of the year. I think that it's a tie between this one and A Court of Silver Flames for me for the top favorite, because this is so good. This is Malibu Rising, and you are following 4 different siblings in Malibu in 1983. And it all takes place in the main storyline takes place in just one day. And it counts down throughout the day, because the first thing that you read is kind of backwards. It starts at the end, which is a house on fire on the beach. And you go throughout the day, and you also get flashbacks between the siblings' parents in like the 60s, I believe. Very atmospheric. I definitely recommend reading this in the summer because there's a lot of talks of surfing and the beach. I believe we read this in the summer, and it was really cool. I like reading books around the time period that they take place in, so because it's fun. But this is very, very emotional and very deep. Very interesting. Each sibling has their own things that they go through and intertwine. It really talks about generational trauma and how that can affect children, and how it affects each one of them differently. And this is has a lot of trigger warnings. So there's death, there's alcoholism, there's addiction, drug addiction, suicide, self-harm, all kinds of stuff is in here. So just be aware of that. But I feel like it talks about it in a really tasteful way, and tasteful, as much as you can. I love the oldest sibling. I think that she's awesome. Nina. So 10 out of 10 recommend. I talk about it more on Instagram and on a different video that I did if you guys want to check that out, but really good. Taylor Jenkins Reid. This is my second one I've read. I read the 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, and it was also awesome, but this one's way better in my opinion. All right, 2 more favorites. The next one I have is a mystery, and it is a murder mystery. You guys have heard me talk about this a lot. This was my first favorite of the year. this is my favorite book in January, and this is also one of our book club. Oh, I forgot to mention Malibu Rising was also a book club pick, which was awesome. This one is also one of our book club picks, which was really fun. This is a very good book club book, very good discussion around this to try to figure out what's going on. The best way I can describe this, I think, is the blurb on the back from someone. Pop your favorite Agatha Christie whodunit into a blender with a scoop of Downton Abbey, a dash of Quantum Loop, and a liberal sprinkling of Groundhog Day, and you'll get this unique murder mystery. I think that's perfect to describe this. So very much murder mystery, very much really cool, like early 19th or late 19th century vibe. The cover is really cool. It basically you're living the same day over and over again in different bodies. And each character is different and gives you different clues about the murder that happened. So if you love murder mystery, I 100% recommend this. This is an awesome mystery. Last one I have is a nonfiction. I'm trying to read a little bit more nonfiction this year, and this was my favorite nonfiction of last year. It is What Happened to You, and it is by Oprah Winfrey and a doctor. I don't remember his name, but it'll be on the screen, so sorry. Fabulous nonfiction, fabulous audiobook because they both narrate it, and I think that that's really cool. And it feels very much like a conversation, and it is about trauma and how it affects the body and the brain and how the body and the brain are connected. It talks a lot about PTSD and things like that and how that physically affects you. And it's just really neat and like really, you know, I'm a big advocate for mental health and talking about things. And so I think that this does a really good job of talking about the science behind it without being too much. And it's very accessible. It really breaks it down very simply. And it's a pretty short audiobook if I remember correctly. So you guys should definitely check that out. My favorite nonfiction of the year. And I think that wraps it up. Honestly, it was a really good reading year. I ended up reading 70 books, which is really cool. My goal this year is 75, but I'm not being too hard on myself because like it's about quality, not quantity for me. So my goal is to read more of my physical books that I have. Oh, dog just woke up. To read more of the books I already have on my shelves. So excited to talk to you guys more about books this year, and I will catch you guys on the next one. Bye.